BS.
TV.
You know, it's a sad day when criminals can show more of a sense of justice than some police officers. What I mean by that is, when you have people in jail or in prison, you have murderers, you have drug dealers, you have gangbangers, you have robbers. But even amongst all those criminals, if a person comes in and they committed rape, they raped a woman, they molested a child, a little boy or a little girl, even the most heartless criminal will turn on that other criminal and recognize that they went beyond the line. You crossed the line by doing that. And in prison, that person will be met with street justice or vigilante justice or whatever you want to call it. Police officers and criminals don't agree on a lot of things, but even in prison, when a person comes in for rape or molestation, even the police officers will let the other inmates know what that person did and will turn a blind eye to that criminal and put him in population because they know he's going to get beat up or even murdered, because they all agree that that's just crossing the line. So criminals could turn on their fellow criminals and acknowledge what they did was repugnant. Why can't cops do that? What's really disappointing is that a lot of police officers don't have that ability. We often hear people say, well, it's not all officers. Some officers, most officers are good. And you know what? I agree with that. The problem is, even the good police officers very rarely condemn the actions of the bad police officers. That's the problem. When you have a police officer that shoots an unarmed man in the back, running away 8 times without a gun, and then plant a taser next to a dead body, falsify police report, every single good cop should be bothered by that. And every single good cop should take a stand against that. If every cop, so-called good cop, took a stand against that, then the way police officers are viewed would be different. What's disappointing with that is, if you have criminals who break the law could turn against their own fellow criminals and acknowledge they crossed the line by molesting or raping a child or a woman, how come police officers, the good ones, can't turn against their fellow police officers and acknowledge when the evidence is on video and is plain as day and say, this officer crossed the line. What they did was wrong. I don't condone that. It's a sad day when the criminals can show more of a sense of justice in that way than some police officers. When a police officer shoots an unarmed man in the back 8 times and kills him, murders him, and then plants a taser next to the dead body, falsify police reports, or like the case that happened in South Jersey where an officer allowed a police dog to bite a man's face off until a man died, every single good cop should be opposed to that. But what happens is, even the good cops stand behind that bad cop's action and say, let's just trust the process. Let the system play out. Trust the system. Don't rush to judgment. But when a police officer takes a gun or they murder a suspect that they're supposed to apprehend, didn't that cop just rush to judgment? Didn't he just decide in his mind, he made a judgment call that this man's life is not worth living? He rushed to judgment. He took the law into his own hands. Now, I don't care what that suspect is doing. If he's involved in criminal activity, then he should be arrested. But the cop's job is not to judge. That cop's job is to apprehend unless his life or a citizen's life is in danger. It's not to judge whether that person should live or die at your hands. So if you're going to trust the system, you apprehend the criminal or the suspect, allow him to have his day in court before the judge, and let that person who has the responsibility of judging, the judge, decide whether he should be incarcerated or whether he should be free. That would be you setting an example of trust in the system. But you cannot expect people to trust the system when it comes to you, but you yourself not setting an example of trusting the system when it comes to arresting people. Now, I heard and I watch on social media a lot of people say, well, if you don't like cops, then don't call them when you need something, or they should take all the cops out of the hood and just let everybody kill themselves off. I'm gonna show you how stupid that thinking is. Let's say a man agrees to marry a woman. He says his vows. He agrees to honor, love, cherish her, provide for her. But now that they're married, he's very abusive. He's verbally abusive. He's physically abusive. But yet he provides a nice home for her. Money is never an issue. She drives a nice car. But now the wife goes to the husband and says, I want you to stop abusing me. And the husband turns around and says, well, if you don't like the abuse, don't drive the car. Don't spend the money. Don't live in this big house. How much sense does that make? If a man was to say that in public, he would be shamed in front of everybody on television. That's how it sounds when some of you say, well, don't call the police when you need something. No. Just like that man took a vow to love, honor, and cherish his wife, he didn't take a vow to abuse her. So like police officers, you took a vow to serve and protect. That's all people want in the hood. To do your job, to stick to your vows, your oath of office, to serve and protect. The abuse don't come along with it. And the last thing that I want to address is this foolishness that President Obama has some agenda against the police officers, or it's President Obama's fault that people in the hood feel tension towards police officers. Again, using the married couple, let's say that husband is abusing his wife month after month, year after year, but she's trying to stay committed to her vows, so she stays. Her family is telling her, you don't have to put up with this. You leave him. You're better than this. So one day, she gets up enough guts to either fight back or to leave her husband. The husband, in turn, gets upset and looks at his in-laws and say, you're the reason why we're not together. You're the reason why my wife is upset. If you didn't say what you said to her, then we would still be together. How much sense does that make? That's how much sense you make when some of you say it's President Obama's fault. This is a result of years and years and decades of tension between police officers and those in the hood. So you need to address the real issues in order to get this situation resolved.
Stop the BS. TV.